Chapter 1. A bitter December. Wind herds carolers past the brownstone, and one of them locks eyes on Saul Panza, like he's just spotted a tombstone with fresh ink. Saul's hand slips inside his coat, quick, quiet, and not for warmth. And I catch the message. This isn't music. It's a siren with a human face. The caroler drops a folded paper into the snowbank by the stoop and keeps singing like nothing happened. Wolfe dislikes surprises, but he dislikes bullets even more, and Saul says one word that chills the entry hall: recognized. I fish out the paper, 3 numbers, 1 street name, and tonight's date. And the doorknob behind me turns. It turned with the smooth assurance of a man who could manage 10 servants and 1,000 nerves without raising his voice. Archie. Fritz Brenner said, mild as warmed milk. Mr. Wolfe asks that you come at once. I'm coming, I told him. I tucked the paper into my palm and shut the front door against the cold and the singing. The carolers' voices faded, swallowed by the walls of the brownstone, the way a scandal gets swallowed by a thick rug if you have enough money and you don't invite the neighbors. Fritz's eyes slid past my shoulder towards Saul. Fritz has a cultivated talent for not noticing what he isn't asked to notice, but Saul Panza standing in our entry hall with his hand inside his coat is the kind of fact that pushes back. Saul said, I'll be in the office. Do that, I said. And if you decide to shoot anybody, pick someone who isn't providing seasonal cheer. The corner of Saul's mouth moved, then decided against it. He headed down the hall. Fritz led me the other way, past the dining room where the table gleamed with the promise of lunch already planned, and toward the office where Nero Wolfe sat like the chief judge of a private court. The office smelled the way it always does: leather, tobacco, and that faint, disciplined perfume that drifted down from the plant rooms like a reminder that Wolfe had passions besides food and being right. Wolfe's broad back was to the door. He didn't turn until I was a few steps in, and then only his eyes moved, taking me in from hat to shoes with the brisk displeasure of a man seeing mud on his own carpet. What is it? He asked. I don't know yet, I said, but it came singing. Saul was already in the red chair, hat on his knee, looking composed the way a safecracker looks composed while he's thinking about tumblers. I crossed to Wolfe's desk and opened my hand. The folded paper lay there like a small, pale insect. Wolfe picked it up with 2 thick fingers as if it might stain him. He opened it and studied the writing. I had already seen it. 3 numbers written with a hard pencil: 3, 11, 9, then the word Waverley, then the date, the 4th of December tonight. No time, no initials, no helpful hint. Just those bare bones. Wolfe's eyes went to Saul. You said, recognized, explain. Saul's voice was dry. The one who looked at me, I've seen him before, not as a caroler. In what capacity? Wolfe asked. Saul paused just long enough to show that his memory had shelves. A messenger for a man named Kestrel. 6 years ago, Kestrel ran bookmaking and a little fencing on the west side. The messenger's name then was Ray Dern. I tailed him twice. Wolfe made a sound that could have been disgust or interest. With Wolfe, it is sometimes hard to tell, because he saves enthusiasm for orchids and food. And he recognized you. He looked right at me, Saul said. He knew me. He also knew not to approach the door. He dropped that in the snow like he didn't want to be seen giving it. I leaned on the edge of Wolfe's desk. I'll add one detail. He didn't stop singing. If he's scared, he's disciplined about it. Wolfe stared at the paper as if it had insulted him personally. Waverley, he said. There is Waverley Place. There is Waverley Street. There are establishments with that name. And the numbers? Apartment, I suggested. 3rd floor, number 11, 9 o'clock, or 3, 11, 9, maybe the 9th of November, but the date is plain, or it's a hymn number. You know, verse 3, line 11, word 9. Wolfe's eyes flicked up. Do not be absurd. I try not to be, I said, but people keep tempting me. He pushed the paper toward me with a fingertip. Goodwin, You will go at once to locate Waverley and interpret these numbers in the most reasonable manner. Take Mr. Panzer with you. If there is danger, I prefer it to be at a distance." "That's the spirit," I said. "Any preference between place and street?" Wolfe's lids lowered. "Do you think I am obliged to choose between ignorances? Use your judgment." Saul's voice came in flat. "Waverley Place is in the village. 311-9 could be the order of bells at a church." Wolfe looked pained. "Mr. Panzer, I employ you because you are effective, not because you are imaginative." Saul didn't blink. "Yes, sir." Wolfe's gaze moved to me. "This may be a summons, it may be a trap, it may be both. If it is a summons and the person wishes my services, he has selected a crude method. If it is a trap, it is also crude. Either way, it is an annoyance." I straightened. "And you can't tolerate annoyance." "I tolerate many," Wolfe said. "Because I have no alternative." "Proceed." Fritz appeared at the door as if he had been standing there all along, which he probably had. "Mr. Wolfe, lunch will be served at 1. Wolfe nodded without looking away from me. "Very well." That told me he intended to sit where he was, eat what Fritz put in front of him, and let the world turn itself into knots in some other part of Manhattan. I pocketed the paper and went for my coat. In the entry hall, Saul was waiting, already buttoned up, hat on. "Fred?" I asked. Saul shook his head. "Better not. If this is Kestrel's work, they will expect muscle. 2 of us is quieter." "Fine," I said. "But if somebody decides to improve the neighborhood with a bullet, I want you between me and it." "That's usually how it works," Saul said. We stepped out into the cold. The carolers had moved down the block, their voices coming back faint and thin from around the corner. The sky was a dull slate, the sort that makes the city's lights look tired before they even come on. I unlocked the coupe, Saul slid in beside me, and we headed south. The ride gave Saul a chance to be Saul. He didn't fill silence because he had no need to. I did, because if I don't, I start thinking about things I'd rather not think about, like why a man would dress up as a caroler to slip a message to Nero Wolfe's door. "What was Kestrel's real name?" I asked. As we crossed 57th, Saul's eyes stayed on the street. "I never knew he kept it tight. Mid-level operator with high-level caution." "And Bragin small," Saul said. "Too enough to take a punch and smart enough to avoid a prison term. If he's out singing in the cold, he's either reformed or desperate." "People don't reform," I said. "They change uniforms." Saul's mouth did the almost smile again, sometimes. When we hit the village, the streets narrowed and the buildings leaned in like gossips. Waverley Place turned up exactly where it had always been, short and old, and pretending it wasn't part of the same city that held Fifth Avenue and the Bronx. I pulled up to the curb and killed the engine. "Number?" Saul asked. I looked at the paper again under the dashlight. 311-9. "Pick the simplest," I said. "3rd floor, apartment 11, 9 o'clock. It's not 9 yet, but we don't get prizes for punctuality." We found a brown brick apartment building with a recessed doorway and a glass panel smeared by fingers. The brass numbers over the door said 11 Waverley Place. "That fits," I said. Saul tested the door, unlocked. That was either an invitation or an oversight. In the city, it's sometimes hard to tell which is more dangerous. Inside, the stairwell smelled of damp wool and cooking that had given up trying to be good. We climbed to the 3rd floor. The hall was narrow, lit by a single bulb that looked tired. Apartment doors lined both sides, each one a blank face. A small metal number, 11, was nailed to a door at the far end. Saul got there first, stopped, and held up a hand. I heard it too, the faint sound of singing. Inside, it wasn't the cheery kind. It was one voice, low and wavering, and it was repeating the same phrase like a man trying to stay awake or trying to keep from screaming. The words were English, but the tune was off. Key flattened by fear. Saul's hand went inside his coat again. This time he brought out a small automatic and held it low along his thigh where it wouldn't flash in the light. I didn't have a gun, I have many skills, but I have never made a gun look like anything but a gun. So Wolfe prefers I leave them to men like Saul and Inspector Kramer. I moved close to the door. There was no light under it. I rapped once with my knuckles. The singing stopped so abruptly, it was like a string snapped. A man's voice called, "Who is it?" "Christmas committee," I said. "We're collecting for the poor." A pause. Then, "I didn't send for." "Yes, you did," I said, and leaned closer. "You dropped a message at Nero Wolfe's door." "Nothing." Saul's eyes met mine. They were as calm as a thermometer. He lifted his chin at the doorknob. I tried it. It turned. The door swung inward 2 inches and stopped. Caught by a chain, a slice of darkness showed, and then a pale face slid into it, narrow, sweaty, and younger than I expected. His eyes were big with strain. He looked past me at Saul, and the fear in his expression sharpened into something else. Recognition, sure, but also relief that had been kept on a leash too long. "You came," he whispered. "Try not to sound disappointed," I said. "Are you Emil Brigid?" His throat bobbed. "Not that name, not now." "Fine," I said. "We don't care what you call yourself. We care why you're playing choir boy and leaving bread, crumbs in snow." He swallowed. "They'll kill me." "That's popular," I said. "Who will?" He flicked his eyes at Saul again. "Kestrel's men, he's back. He thinks I stole from him." Saul's voice was quiet. "Kestrel is dead." The man made a small noise, half laugh and half cough. "That's what they said." "He isn't." Saul didn't move, but his eyes changed. "Who told you he isn't?" The man's fingers tightened on the door edge. "He did. He called me. Yesterday, said I had until tonight. To do what?" I asked. "To bring back what I took," the man said, "or pay another way." "And what did you take?" I asked. His eyes darted away. "Nothing. Not his. Not really. I was there. That's all. I saw something. I kept something. That last part landed with the weight of truth. People can lie all day, but when they start trimming their sentences, it means they're protecting a fact," I said. "Let us in. You'll feel better if you can see who's shooting at you." His mouth twitched, and he worked the chain off. The door opened. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn, one lamp on in the far room. The air smelled of stale coffee and nervous sweat. A cheap Christmas wreath hung crooked on an inside doorknob, as if the place itself was trying to pretend it belonged in December. The man backed away, keeping his eyes on Saul as if Saul might change his mind and become the threat instead of the help. Saul moved first, stepping in with that quiet glide he has, scanning corners, doorways, shadows. I followed and shut the door behind me. "Sit down," I told the man. "Talk fast." He sank onto a chair by a little table littered with sheet music and a half-eaten sandwich sheet music. So he really was a caroller, at least part-time. "My name is Evan Rook," he said. "That's the one on my lease. I sing with a group. We get hired for parties, stores, churches. It's honest. Honest is always something people mention when it's about to change," I said. "Where were you when you saw something?" Rook licked his lips. 6 years ago for Kestrel, I carried messages. I did pickups. One night he sent me to a brownstone, not far from here. I was to wait outside and take a package from a man coming out. Saul's gaze stayed on him, steady, address. Rook shook his head quickly. "I don't know. I didn't then. I was told a corner and a time. I waited. A man came out. He handed me a small envelope. It was heavy. "Money," I said. "Yes," Rook said. "But not cash. It felt wrong, too hard. I didn't open it. I took it back. Kestrel did open it." "And?" Saul asked. Rook's voice dropped. He went white. I'd never seen him like that. He told me to forget it. He told me if I ever spoke of it, he'd feed me to the river. "Then why are you speaking now?" I asked. "Because I didn't forget," Rook said. "I couldn't. I heard him on the phone later. He was scared. He said, 'This isn't money. This is a death.'" Saul's eyebrows moved a fraction, with Saul that's practically a shrug. Rook leaned forward, hands clasped so tight, his knuckles were pale. A week later, Kestrel vanished. They said he was shot. They said it was a gang fight. I kept my mouth shut and I changed my name and I tried to be clean. And now he's back, I said. Yes, Rook said. 2 days ago, a man came to my job at a catering hall where we sing. He left a note in my case. It said Kestrel remembers. Saul said, "Who was the man?" Rook shook his head. "I don't know him, but last night," he swallowed hard. "Last night my phone rang. A man spoke. He didn't say his name, but I knew his voice. Thin, sharp, he said. "Evan, you have something I need. Bring it to me, or I will take it from your corpse," I said. "And you decided Nero Wolfe was the logical next step?" Rook's eyes flashed. I remembered Wolfe. People talked, Kestrel talked. He hated Wolfe because Wolfe wouldn't be bought and wouldn't be frightened. He called him a fat brain in a chair. That's affectionate. In its way, I said. Rook's hands unclasped, and he reached under the table. He pulled out a small metal box, the kind you'd keep jewelry in if you didn't trust drawers. He set it down as if it was hot. "This," he said. Saul stepped closer, gun still low but ready. "What is it?" Rook opened the box. Inside was a key, not a house key, a safe deposit key, small and blunt, with a number stamped into it. I leaned in. The number was 3119. I looked at Saul. "Our 3 numbers," I said. Rook nodded, eyes wet now, not with sentiment but with raw nerves. "I stole it. That night, before I gave the envelope to Kestrel, I felt something else in my pocket. I had been told to take only the envelope, but I was curious. I slipped my hand inside my coat and found this key in a side pocket. It must have been put there by whoever gave the envelope. I kept it." Saul's voice was still calm. "Where is the box the key opens?" "A bank," Rook said. "I didn't know which. Not at first. But a month ago, I started getting letters. No return address. Just one sentence. You still have it." Last week one came with a bank name. He reached for a scrap of paper on the table and pushed it toward me. It had the name of a bank in neat block letters, Hudson Fidelity, and under it, Box 3119. I let out a slow breath. "So Kestrel wasn't just threatening you," I said. "He was hunting that key." Rook nodded miserably. "I didn't open the box. I was afraid if it was money, it was stolen money. If it was something else," he swallowed. "Then it was worse." "And you're sure the caller was Kestrel?" I said. Rook's eyes darted again. "I'm sure enough to be dying." I turned my head slightly and saw Saul's attention had shifted past Rook to the apartment door. "What?" I murmured. Saul's eyes tightened. "Footsteps," he said. I listened. At first there was nothing but the hum of the building and Rook's breathing, then faint, careful, someone moving in the hall. Not the loud, careless steps of a tenant going for the mail. These were measured, testing. Rook heard it too. His face went grey. "They found me," he whispered. Saul's gun came up, no longer pretending to be polite. He moved toward the door with that smooth economy that makes you feel you should have hired him years earlier. I lifted a hand to quiet Rook, and then I heard the click. Not a doorknob, not the chain, the soft metallic tick of something being fitted into a lock. I looked at Saul. He didn't look back. He was listening, calculating, preparing. I took one step toward the lamp and switched it off, plunging the room into a thicker dark. And in that same instant the lock gave a tiny, satisfied sound. The door handle began to turn. Chapter 2. The door handle began to turn. Saul moved like the idea had occurred to him yesterday, and he had simply been waiting for the proper moment to act on it. He didn't rush. He slid to the side of the door, shoulder close to the jamb. Gun up now and honest, his face blank the way a man's face gets when he has decided. There is no room for anything but decisions. I took one more step back into the room and put my hand on Evan Rook's shoulder. He was standing, half crouched, like a rabbit that has just heard the hawk's shadow. I pushed him down toward the floor behind the table. "Stay," I breathed. He tried to speak. Only air came out. The latch clicked. The door eased inward a fraction and stopped, as if whoever was outside had found the chain and was politely respecting it. Until the chain gave a sharp metallic snap. That wasn't a polite sound. It was the sound of a small bolt cutter or a hard jerk on cheap hardware. The door swung in. A man came through fast, hunched, wearing a dark cap pulled low. He had a thin face and a thick scarf over his mouth. In his right hand was something short and dull that caught just enough light to tell me it wasn't a gun. It looked like a pry bar, or the kind of tool you'd use to persuade a lock that it wanted to be open. He saw Saul. There is a moment in some men when they realize they have miscalculated, and you can see the arithmetic changing behind their eyes. This man had that moment, and he reacted the way I hoped he would. He changed his mind, Saul said. Drop it. The intruder did not drop it. He pivoted, trying to swing the tool towards Saul's gun hand in a move that might have worked on someone less accustomed to discourtesy. Saul's gun barked once, sharp, loud, and final in the small room. The intruder jerked, stumbled, and slammed his shoulder into the doorframe. He wasn't hit badly, or maybe not at all. Saul is careful where he points a gun when there are walls and innocent bystanders, and a man named Archie Goodwin who is worth more alive than dead. But the shot did its job. It made the intruder forget about bravery and remember about pain. He threw himself backward into the hall. Saul lunged, but I grabbed his sleeve. Don't, I snapped. We're not leaving him in here alone. Saul's eyes flicked to the floor where Rook was curled behind the table. Saul's jaw tightened once. He didn't like being told no, but he liked the idea of Rook being alive. Even less than that. He went to the door and pulled it closed. The hall outside was silent now. Silent in the way a street gets silent after a car backfires and everyone decides not to be the one who looks. Saul reset what was left of the chain as best he could, then crouched and peered through the peephole. He stayed like that for a count of 10. Then he straightened. Gone, he said. Rook lifted his head from behind the table, eyes shining in the dark. He'll come back, he whispered. Maybe, I said, but not right now. Right now he's going to tell someone he found a surprise. Saul scanned the floor near the door. Something white lay there, half under the rug, as if it had skidded when the door slammed. He picked it up and handed it to me. It was a folded scrap of paper torn from a larger sheet. The writing was blocky and certain, done with a hard pencil, the way men write when they don't want ink to tie them to it. Dock Street. No greeting, no signature. Just another set of numbers, and a street name, like the city itself, had decided to communicate in riddles. I looked at Saul. Your friend leave that. Saul's face stayed blank. It wasn't in his hand. It fell from his pocket, or he threw it. Rook's breath hitched. Dock Street, he said, and the words had weight. You know it, I asked. He swallowed. Near the river, warehouses, empty buildings. Nothing is empty, I told him. It's just occupied by people who don't want company. Saul said, we need Wolfe. That's what I was thinking, I said. And since Wolfe won't come here unless there's a roast pheasant waiting in the hall, we bring him the information. Rook shook his head violently. If I leave, they'll follow. If you stay, I said, they'll return with better tools. Saul's eyes stayed on him, level and unkind. Choose. That did it. Fear can make a man stubborn, but it can also make him practical when the options are measured in minutes. Rook nodded once, fast. We got him out through the back stairs, because if you've just had your apartment door kicked in, you don't stroll down the front steps humming a tune. Saul took point. I stayed close behind Rook, and we moved like burglars leaving a job, which, from the building's point of view, we were. We found my coupe where I'd left it and drove north, not fast but steady, the way you drive when you're trying to look like you're not running. Rook sat rigid in the back seat. Saul rode shotgun, silent, eyes on the mirrors. Halfway up 6th Avenue, Saul said, that car behind us, grey sedan, has been there since Houston. I glanced. The sedan was there, 2 cars back, behaving itself. Could be a commuter, I said. Could be. Saul agreed. And when Saul says could be, it usually means is. At a light I made a sudden turn onto a cross street, then another. The sedan followed, still keeping distance. Saul's hand went under his coat again, not for warmth. "Don't," I muttered. "Not on 6th Avenue." "I know," he said. We lost the sedan 3 blocks later by ducking through a narrow street and catching a light that stayed stubbornly red for everyone else. When we hit open traffic again, the grey car was gone. Rook let out a breath he'd been holding so long it might have rusted in his lungs. When we reached the brownstone, Fritz's eyes widened at the sight of a pale young man trailing behind Saul Panzer and me like a guilty secret. Fritz's face did not change, but his eyebrows expressed the question he would not ask. "Mr. Wolfe," I said. "In the office," Fritz replied. "With Mr. Panzer." He corrected himself as Saul walked past him. "With Inspector Kramer." That stopped me in mid-step. "Kramer," I repeated. Fritz nodded, and I followed Saul down the hall with Rook close behind. If Kramer was here, it meant one of two things. Either Wolfe had been bored and called him for sport, or the world had decided to send its trouble to our door early. Kramer was in the red leather chair, hat on his knee, looking like a bulldog forced to sit in a parlor. Wolfe was behind his desk, fingertips together, expression pained as if the air itself was being unreasonable. Kramer's eyes hit me. "Goodwin, where the devil have you been?" "Out," I said. "Getting fresh air and nearly getting killed. Same as always." Wolfe's eyes moved to Rook and narrowed. "Archie, don't start," I said. "This is Evan Rook. He has information, a key, and a strong desire not to be murdered before lunch." Wolfe's nostrils flared. "You have brought a stranger into my house." "I did," I admitted. "But only because you refused to travel." Kramer grunted. "Who's he?" Rook's voice came thin. I'm in trouble." "Join the club," Kramer said. "Only this club has dues." Wolfe's gaze fixed on Rook. "You will speak concisely." Rook tried. He managed to tell Wolfe the essentials, the old bookmaking operation, the safe deposit key with 3,119. The threats, the attempted break. He did it badly, too many breaths. Too much emphasis on terror. But Wolfe has an ear for truth, the way a jeweler has an eye for flaws. When Rook finished, Wolfe's eyes moved to me. "The key." I produced it and the scrap of paper from my pocket. Wolfe took the key first, examined the number stamped on it, then held it up for Kramer to see. Kramer's eyebrows rose. "Safe deposit key, that," Wolfe said, "is the most obvious interpretation." I handed Wolfe the second paper. 17 divided by 9 divided by 42 and Dock Street. Wolfe read it, his face tightening. "Another message," I said. "It appeared during the unpleasantness." Kramer snorted. "Dock Street. That's down near the river. Warehouses, cheap rent and expensive trouble." Wolfe set the paper down as if it had offended him. "And what do you intend, Inspector? To conduct your investigation by chasing numbers?" Kramer's eyes narrowed. "What I intend is to find out if this is connected to the dead man I saw this morning." That got everyone's attention, including Rook, whose eyes went wide. Wolfe said, "Dead man." Kramer leaned forward. "Name of Emil Bragen, found in a doorway off 9th Avenue. Throat cut, pockets turned out. No wallet, no cash, just a cheap hymn book and a badge from some holiday singing outfit." Saul's face shifted almost imperceptibly. "Bragen," he said. Kramer looked at him. "You know him?" Saul nodded once. "I knew him by that name, but the man I saw outside this house last night, your caroller, wasn't Bragen." I blinked. "You're changing your tune, Saul." "I saw him better today," Saul said. "Near the precinct, he was there. Watching, it was Ray Dern." Kramer frowned. "Ray Dern," Saul's voice stayed even. "Used to run errands for Kestrel. Did some time for assault. After he got out, he sang with a church choir. The choir part was real. The rough part never left." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "You are certain?" "Yes," Saul said. "The man last night was Ray Dern. He recognized me because I tailed him, not because of Bragen." Kramer muttered, something that would have made Fritz drop a tray. So Bregen's dead, and Dern's the caroller, and this fellow. He jerked his chin at Rook. Is in the middle. Rook's hands twisted in his lap. They'll kill me, he said again, as if repetition could build armor. Wolfe's voice cut through it. You will not be killed here, not because I have compassion, but because I object to disorder. Inspector, if Mr. Bregen is dead, you have a homicide. I do, Kramer said. And if you've got a safe deposit key tied to old bookmaking, I've got a motive for half the city to take an interest. Wolfe's eyes went to the clock. It is nearly 1. Fritz will serve lunch. After lunch, Goodwin will go to Hudson Fidelity and ascertain the contents of box 3119. Kramer's mouth fell open. Like hell he will. That's evidence. Wolfe's voice was flat. Inspector, you have no warrant, no order, and no legal claim to that key unless you arrest Mr. Rook or Mr. Goodwin. Are you prepared to do so in my office? Kramer glared. He hates being pinned by logic in a room where the furniture is expensive. Don't get smart, Wolfe. I cannot help it, Wolfe said. It is my nature. Kramer's eyes shifted to Rook. You come with me. We'll put you somewhere safe. Rook's head jerked. Number, if I go with police, they'll know. They'll follow, they'll stop, Wolfe said. Your fear is tedious. Rook flinched, but he shut his mouth. Kramer stood. I'm taking him. Wolfe did not move, but the temperature in the room dropped anyway. You will not take him until I have dined. If you insist, Inspector, you may attempt to drag him from my house while I observe. I will then instruct Mr. Panzer to prevent you. For a second, Kramer's eyes looked like they might actually pop. Then he exhaled through his nose and sat back down hard, as if the chair had insulted him. Fine, he growled. Eat your lunch. But nobody goes to any bank without me. Wolfe nodded as if granting a favor to an unruly child. Excellent. Fritz came in a moment later, smooth as always, and announced lunch as if we were hosting a committee meeting instead of staging a standoff. Wolfe rose, majestic and annoyed, and headed for the dining room. Kramer followed like a man going to the gallows. Saul stayed near Rook, and I stayed near Saul, because if there was going to be an explosion, I wanted to be in a position to describe it later during lunch. Wolfe ate with concentrated pleasure, because that is how Wolfe defends himself against the world. Kramer ate like a man forced to swallow compromise. Rook barely touched his plate, staring at the food as if it might accuse him of something. When it was over, Wolfe returned to the office and settled behind his desk. He looked at me. Goodwin, he said. This is not yet a case. It is an intrusion. It may become a case if it continues to impose itself. It will, I said. It already has. Wolfe's eyes went to the paper again. 17 divided by 9 divided by 42, Dock Street. We will interpret this message by proceeding to Dock Street. The most reasonable assumption is that the numbers refer to a building and a location within it. 17, I said. 9th something. 42 could be a room, a floor, or a year someone wishes us to admire. Kramer pushed himself up. We go together. Wolfe's lips tightened. I do not go. No, I said. You don't. You send me and Saul, and Kramer follows us like a bad smell. Kramer glared at me. Watch it, Goodwin. I always do, I said. That's why I'm still pretty. Wolfe gave a small nod to Saul. Mr. Panzer, you will accompany Mr. Goodwin. Saul said. Yes, sir. Wolfe's gaze slid to Rook. You will remain here. Rook's head snapped up. Here, with Fritz, I said, which is safer than with the Navy. Fritz appeared at the door, as if summoned by his name. Yes, Archie. Keep an eye on our guest, I said, and if he tries to sing, stop him. Fritz's expression did not change, but something in his eyes said he understood perfectly. We left Wolfe in his office, satisfied that he had arranged the chess pieces properly, and would now wait for the board to produce a result. Saul and I headed out with Kramer behind us, grumbling like a man who has been forced to attend a concert he didn't choose. Dock Street was a different New York than Wolfe's. It smelled of river and oil and old wood, and the wind came off the water with a damp bite that made your collar feel useless. The buildings were low and blunt, a row of warehouses that looked like they'd been built for storing secrets, and now did it out of habit. We found Dock Street without trouble. We found number 17 with even less. It was a warehouse with boards over the lower windows, the door chained, the brickwork stained by years and neglect, the kind of place where you'd expect rats, not riddles. And yet, Saul tilted his head. Light, he said. I followed his gaze. Up on the facade, on what had to be the 9th window from the left, counting the dark ones, there was a faint glow behind dirty glass, a living, stubborn rectangle of yellow in a dead building, Kramer muttered. That place is supposed to be empty. People are always supposed to be something, I said. They disappoint us. We stood on the sidewalk, looking up. The street was quiet. No pedestrians, no traffic. The river wind pushed a scrap of paper down the gutter like it had business. Saul's eyes kept moving. Door, windows, roofline, alley. 17 is the building, he said. 9th window. 42 could be inside. Or it's the number of seconds we have before something goes wrong, I said. Kramer stepped forward and yanked at the chain door. It didn't budge. He swore softly, then looked at Saul. Saul didn't wait to be told. He moved to the side where the boards were nailed over a window. He tested one board with his fingers, then slid something thin from his pocket and worked it under a nail with the calm of a man removing a splinter. The board loosened with a squeal of protesting wood. Kramer's eyes widened. Where'd you learn that? Saul didn't answer. He pried the board free enough to make a gap, then peered in. Dark, he said. But not empty. How can you tell? I asked. Smell, Saul said. Cigarettes. Recent. I leaned closer. The air that seeped out was colder than the street, and it did carry a faint stink of smoke and something else. Dust disturbed, wood scraped, a hint of damp cloth. Kramer pulled a flashlight from his pocket. We go in. He aimed the beam through the gap. The light cut a pale line across the warehouse interior, showing stacks of crates, broken pallets, and a stretch of floor with footprints in dust. Then, from somewhere inside, higher up toward the back, a voice began to sing. It was a carol, or it was trying to be. The tune was familiar enough to make my teeth ache with holiday memories, but the pitch was wrong, the timing shaky. One voice, alone, dragging the notes like a man hauling a suitcase upstairs. Saul's jaw tightened. That's him, he said. Ray Dern. Kramer's flashlight hand steadied. You sure? Saul nodded. I heard him once in a church basement. Same voice, same bad habit of sliding off the note. The singing rose, thin and lonely, bouncing off warehouse walls. It sounded less like celebration than like a signal, like a flare fired in the dark. I looked at Kramer. This is where we decide whether we're brave or sensible. Kramer shoved his shoulder against the board, widening the gap. We're cops, he growled. We're always brave. That explains the mortality rate, I said. Saul went first through the window opening, slipping in like he belonged to shadows. I followed, then Kramer, who had to wriggle and curse because the warehouse wasn't built for inspectors with winter coats and stubbornness. Inside, the air was colder and thicker. The flashlight beam jumped as Kramer swung it around, catching dust motes like tiny snowstorms. The singing continued, coming from above. Maybe a stairwell, maybe a loft. We moved forward, boots crunching softly on grit. The warehouse swallowed sound, making every step feel loud and every breath feel like it might be heard. Then the song cut off, not fading, not ending, cut off, as if someone had clapped a hand over the singer's mouth. For a fraction of a second, there was silence so complete it felt like pressure. And then, a scream, one sharp, tearing scream that ripped through the warehouse and ended on a strangled choke. Kramer's flashlight jerked up toward the stairs. Saul's gun was already in his hand. I didn't think about Wolfe's office or Fritz's calm or the safe deposit key resting in my pocket at home. I thought only that whatever was upstairs had just changed from a clue into a body, or was about to. We ran for the sound. Chapter 3. We ran for the sound. The iron stairs bolted to the warehouse wall, shook under Kramer's weight, and rang under my shoes. Saul moved without ringing anything. He has that gift. Halfway up, the air changed. Candle wax, damp wool, and fear. The last one thick enough to taste. At the loft, level the flashlight beam found tinsel and plastic garlands taped along the rail. A holiday costume on a place that had no business celebrating. One door stood ajar, yellow light leaked out, and the smell got worse. Kramer pushed in first because he is congenitally unable to wait. Saul slid after him, gun up, and I followed and saw the room all at once. A folding table had been set up as a shrine. On it sat a cheap plastic nativity stable. Shepherds, sheep, wise men, the whole bargain, basement theology. The table was toppled now, and the stable roof had skidded against a man's back. He lay face down beneath it, legs crooked, coat bunched at the shoulders. His hands were behind him, wrists tied with silver tinsel twisted tight enough to cut skin. The throat was cut. Not delicately. Blood had soaked the collar, stiffened, and dried dark. One fresh smear ran across the dusty boards, as if someone had started to drag him, and then decided it wasn't worth the effort. Kramer said, low, "Dern." Saul crouched, turned the head enough to see the face, and the flashlight caught the eyes. Open, fixed, and aimed. Not at the ceiling, not at the door. At Saul, a dead stare can't accuse, but this one managed it anyway, with a last look that said recognition. Saul's face didn't change, his jaw tightened once. "Ray Dern," I said. "Aroff Key Carola." "My crime scene," Kramer growled. "Nobody touches anything." "Of course," I said. "I'm a guest." The room had been arranged, 2 folding chairs, a crate for a table. 3 fat candles jammed into wine bottles burned low. Wax dripped on the crate and pooled on the floor. A pile of coats in the corner gave the damp wool smell. Fear supplied the rest. On the far wall, pinned up with thumbtacks, were 4 pages of sheet music. At a glance it looked ordinary. Title, staff lines, notes, printed lyrics. But the notes were wrong. Wrong in a way no composer makes by accident. Measures bulged. Beats didn't fit. Notes were shoved up or down as if someone wanted the music to fail. Kramer's flashlight lingered there. "What's that?" "A lie with a treble clef," I said. I moved closer and read the top line. The title was The Shepherd's Watch. Beneath it, in tidy print, was the name R. Dern, as if Ray had composed a carol and signed it with pride. Saul, still near the body, said quietly, "Dern couldn't read music. He sang by ear." That made the signature a joke. If Dern couldn't read it, he couldn't have written it, and if he couldn't have written it, then the name was there to bait somebody, perhaps the police, perhaps Saul. I stepped closer, keeping my hands to myself, and did what Archie Goodwin does when a thing looks like a thing but smells like something else. I counted. Measures with the wrong notes, irregular beats. Tiny pencil marks in the margins that were too deliberate to be careless. The marks weren't corrections. They were signposts. It began to line up in my head. Take the corrupted measures, count them, and use the count to pluck letters from the printed lyric lines beneath. Childish, really, except that childish codes get people killed just as well as clever ones. That was as far as I got before Kramer's patience broke. "Goodwin," he snapped. "Back off." "I am backed off," I said. "Mentally, I'm still here." He started toward me, and I did the sensible, law-abiding thing. I saved the evidence from his boots. I lifted the top page free, folded it once, and slid it into my inside pocket. Kramer's face went a bad color. "Damn it, that's evidence." "Then be grateful it isn't under a patrolman's heel," I said. "Arrest me if you want it." He looked at Saul, then at the body, and chose the body. "You're going to hand it over." Kramer knelt beside Dern, careful now, the way a man becomes careful when the corpse has a name and a file. His beam swept the coat pockets and the tinsel. "Pockets turned," he said. "They took something. Or he never had it," I said. Saul spoke, quiet and flat. He was made to sing, then he was killed. That's a message. To who? Kramer demanded. Saul didn't answer. His eyes slid for a heartbeat, to the dead man's fixed stare, then away. While Kramer worked at being official, Saul moved to the crate and candles, knelt and ran his fingers along the floorboards. One board shifted under pressure. He lifted it with something thin and neat and reached inside. He drew out a bullet, unfired, clean, brass, bright as a new penny. On the base was a stamped symbol, a small bird in a diving posture, wings tucked. I stared. A kestrel. Saul's eyes flicked to mine. Then away, he slipped the bullet into his pocket with the economy of a man putting away a thought. Kramer saw the motion and barked. Hey. Saul looked at him blandly. You didn't see what it was. I saw you take something off the floor. Saul's voice didn't rise. You saw me move. Kramer swore and turned to his radio. Get me homicide. Dock Street, number 17, and a wagon. Uniforms came up the stairs. Then more, then a man with a camera case. The loft filled with boots and breath, and Kramer began staking out boundaries by standing in them. I had already done the only useful things I could do there without a badge. Identify the dead man and keep the message from being trampled. Kramer came over again, jaw set. Goodwin, Panzer, you're leaving. Out into the fresh air, I said. Don't threaten me with comfort. Out, he repeated. We left the loft to the flood of flashlights and official voices and went down into the warehouse where the river stink was a relief after wax and fear. Outside, the wind cut through my coat and did its best to scrape the thoughts out of my head. Saul stood a moment, eyes on the boarded building and that stubborn 9th window light. Dern was looking at me, he said. I saw, I said. That means someone wanted that, Saul said. A last look aimed my way, or they wanted Kramer to think so, I said. Either way, it's stagecraft. Saul's gaze flicked to me. They can't use Kramer to stop Wolfe, but they can use him to slow us. Then we don't slow, I said, and drove. At the brownstone. Fritz met us in the entry hall. His eyes went from my face to Saul's and paused there, then returned to mine with tactful inquiry. Is it unpleasant? He asked. Seasonal, I said. Where's our guest? In the kitchen. Fritz replied. Drinking tea. He is very pale. That makes 2 of us, I said, and headed for the office. Wolfe was behind his desk, of course immovable as a monument. The faint, disciplined smell drifting down from the plant rooms was there too. A reminder that somewhere above us orchids were blooming on schedule, indifferent to murder. I put the sheet music page on Wolfe's desk and told him what Dock Street had offered. Ray Dern dead, under plastic shepherds, wrists bound with tinsel candles burned low, and a room arranged like a set. Wolfe listened without interruption. When I finished, Saul placed the bullet on the blotter. Wolfe studied the symbol. A bird. A kestrel, Saul said. Wolfe's eyes shifted to Saul's face. You recognize it. From Kestrel's men, Saul replied. He marked things. Wolfe made a small sound of contempt. A childish vanity. It killed a man, I said. Vanity gets results. Wolfe's gaze returned to the sheet music. He tapped the measures where the notes had been corrupted. Intentional, he murmured. Yes, I said. It starts spelling words. West is the first one. Wolfe's eyes lifted. Only the first. I was interrupted by the civic choir, I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Fritz, ask our guest to come here. Fritz appeared at the door as if Wolfe's voice traveled on a private wire. Yes, sir. A minute later, Evan Rook came in, escorted by Fritz's calm presence, the way a nervous child is escorted by a nurse. Rook's face was pale, his hands wrapped around a cup that must have been hot enough to scald, because he clung to it like a life preserver. Wolfe regarded him. Mr. Rook, the man who delivered the first message to my door, is dead. Rook blinked, slow. Bragan. No, I said. Ray Dern. The caroller Saul recognized. Rook's mouth opened and closed. Dern. He was there. Saul said, and his voice had no softness in it. And he was killed. Rook's knees looked uncertain. Fritz, without moving quickly, placed a chair behind him, and Rook sat as if the chair had grabbed him. Wolfe's tone was crisp. "Did you know Mr. Dern?" Rook swallowed. "Only by reputation. He sang with groups sometimes. He had friends who weren't singers." "Did he contact you?" Wolfe asked. Rook's eyes flicked to me, then to Saul, then back to Wolfe. "Yesterday someone left a note in my case," he said. "Not the first one, but this one. This one had numbers. 17, 942, and it said, 'You will be forgiven if you come.'" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Where were you to go?" Rook hesitated, then whispered, 9th Avenue and 42nd. "They wrote it like a meeting place. Like a corner." Saul's eyes hardened. I said, "Why didn't you go?" Rook's laugh was a small, broken thing. "Because I didn't want to be forgiven. I wanted to live." Wolfe nodded once, as if accepting a premise. "And now the man who might have escorted you there has been silenced. Convenient." Rook shivered. "They'll come for me." "They will attempt it," Wolfe said. "Whether they succeed depends on whether Mr. Goodwin can follow directions." I started to protest, then remembered Wolfe doesn't care about protests. He cares about results. Wolfe lifted the page of music and, with a pencil, began writing measure counts and letter positions on a pad. For a minute, the office held only the scratch of lead and the soft ticking of the clock. Rook watched as if Wolfe's pencil might produce a wall. Then Wolfe's pencil stopped. He looked up, eyes calm and certain. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "this is not a hymn. It is a map." "A map to where?" I demanded. Wolfe tapped his pad. "To an intersection, 9th Avenue and West 42nd Street, and within that building, to the 17th level." Saul's eyes narrowed. "Those numbers again?" "Precisely," Wolfe said. "The scrap of numbers was a direction. Dock Street was camouflage, chosen to lure you to the river, to provide a stage for murder, and to paint Mr. Panzer with the dead man's last glance." I felt my mouth go dry. "So Dock Street was a diversion, and the real target is 9th and 42nd. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "Dock Street was also a warning. The maker of this map wishes us to follow it, and he demonstrates the consequence of delay. He expects us to arrive late." Rook's voice came thin. "What's on the 17th level?" Wolfe's eyes slid to him. "Possibly your death. Possibly an explanation. Possibly both." He nodded once toward the door, dismissing me into motion. And from the hall came Fritz's voice, calm as ever. "Archie, there is a gentleman here who insists he must speak to Mr. Wolfe at once. He says his name is Hal Mercer and that his tenant has disappeared. He also says there is blood." Chapter 4. Hal Mercer smelled like wet overcoat and cold tobacco, and he had the particular shine in his eyes that comes from a man who has been rehearsing fear in front of a mirror. He stood in the doorway of Wolfe's office with his hat crushed in both hands, as if he had decided hats were the safest place to grip his courage. Fritz hovered a step behind him, composed as a butler can be when a stranger announces blood in the same tone. Other men announce a plumbing problem. Wolfe didn't rise. He didn't even soften. His eyes stayed half-lidded, the way they do when he is deciding how much of his attention a nuisance deserves. "You will speak," Wolfe said, "and you will be concise. If you cannot manage that, you will depart." Mercer swallowed. "My tenant, he's gone, disappeared. He left the place. It's all strung up with Christmas stuff, garlands, lights, like he was throwing a party for ghosts, and there's blood, fresh. Kramer's chair was empty today, and I missed it the way you miss a loud neighbor when the building goes suddenly quiet." Saul was standing near the door, shoulders relaxed, face shut. Evan Rook was not in the office. Wolfe had ordered him upstairs under Fritz's supervision, and Fritz had complied with the calm authority of a man who can stop a panic by offering tea. Wolfe's voice stayed level. "Name of the tenant?" Mercer hesitated. "Clive Borton." "Address," Wolfe said. 31 West 44th. Mercer said quickly. A rooming place. I'm the landlord. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me, Goodwin. I hear it, I said. 40. Fourth is awfully close to the other numbers dancing around our ankles. Mercer's gaze jumped to Saul and back. He had the look of a man who wants to ask who Saul is and decides he doesn't want to know. Wolfe pressed. When did you last see Mr. Borton? Yesterday, Mercer said. He paid. Cash. He never pays cash. He said he'd be out late. This morning, I went in. He hadn't come back. The bed wasn't slept in, but the place. He lifted his hands helplessly, like a holiday display, and blood on the floor. A spot, not a puddle. Like someone cut themselves, or like someone wanted me to think someone cut themselves. That is perceptive, Wolfe said, and Mercer looked briefly proud before remembering he was frightened. Why did you come to me? Mercer licked his lips. People said you handled trouble. People say many foolish things, Wolfe replied. Did you call the police? Mercer shook his head too fast. Not yet, I thought. If it was nothing, if it was just him running off. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or if the police would ask questions you prefer not to answer. Mercer's face tightened. I don't know what you mean. I mean, Wolfe said, that you are lying about something. Whether that something is important remains to be seen. Mercer's breathing got shallow. His fear was practiced. Yes, but that was what troubled me. He wasn't afraid of a vanished tenant. He was afraid of a wrong line in the script. I said, Mr. Mercer, did you ever rent a storage locker? What? His head jerked. Number. Wolfe's eyes slid to me. Explain, Archie. I took the sheet music page from my pocket and laid it on Wolfe's desk again. After Dock Street, you said. It was a map. You pulled 9th Avenue and West 42nd out of it. Maybe it keeps going. Wolfe's expression suggested I had just announced gravity. It does. He picked up his pencil, tapped the corrupted measures, and began, with annoying ease, to extract more letters. Wolfe does not labor, he performs. In less than a minute, he had written a sequence on his pad, then turned it so I could see. Saul's eyes hardened. Mercer's face went pale in a way that was not rehearsed. Wolfe watched him carefully. You say you have never rented a locker, and yet your name appears in this message, encoded with deliberation. How do you account for that? Mercer's mouth opened, closed. I don't. This is insane. I'm a landlord. I don't have lockers. You have something, Wolfe said. Or you have been selected as a convenient label. Either possibility is instructive. Mercer tried for indignation and came up with perspiration. I didn't do anything. I came because I thought you could help. I can, Wolfe said, but I dislike being manipulated. Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Panzer will accompany you to this storage facility on West 42nd Street. If you prevaricate, the excursion will become unpleasant. Mercer flinched. You're not coming. Wolfe's eyes widened slightly, a look of affront that he should be expected to travel. Certainly not. Then why? Because, Wolfe said, you are in the center of this, and I prefer to observe the center rather than chase the edges. Go. Mercer's shoulders sagged. All right. I stood. Before we go, one small thing, that bloodstain in Borton's room. You stepped in it. Mercer blinked. Number. Good, I said. Kramer would take your shoes and your dignity and send you home in socks. Wolfe spoke crisply. Goodwin, take the automobile. Mr. Panzer will do what he does. Mr. Mercer will answer questions. Yes, sir, I said, and pocketed the sheet music again. Wolfe kept his pad, of course. He doesn't trust paper to behave itself in other people's pockets. As we went out, Fritz was waiting in the hall, calm eyes on Mercer. Fritz's politeness can be more intimidating than a gun. It reminds you that rules exist even in emergencies, Fritz said softly. Mr. Mercer, will you return soon? Mercer swallowed. Yes. Fritz nodded, which was as close as he comes to a warning. Outside, the December air slapped us into motion. Mercer hurried ahead as if the sidewalk might open and swallow him. Saul moved beside him. Not close enough to look like a guard, but close enough to make the point. In the car, Mercer tried to speak, failed, then tried again. "This is ridiculous. My name in music. How? Who? People with time," I said. "And malice. Both are common." Mercer's fingers worried his hat brim. "I didn't do anything, I swear." "Your swears are a little too polished," I told him, "like you've been practicing them." He shot me a look of offended misery. "I'm frightened." "Sure," I said. "But frightened people usually forget to perform. You haven't." Saul's voice cut in, flat. "Where is the facility on 42nd? Mercer blinked. "There's one. Hudson Storage Annex. Near 10th. Saul's eyes went to the rearview mirror for a heartbeat, then back to Mercer. "How do you know that if you've never rented a locker?" Mercer's mouth tightened. "Everybody knows it." "Everybody doesn't," Saul said. Mercer stopped talking after that, which was wise. Silence in a car can become a confession all by itself. Hudson Storage Annex turned out to be a low brick building squeezed between a loading dock and a tire shop. A sign over the door promised safety and privacy in bright letters that looked like they had been designed by someone who had never met either. Inside, the lobby was too warm and smelled of cardboard, dust, and cheap pine disinfectant, trying to pretend it was Christmas. A fake wreath hung on a bulletin board, and a little radio behind the counter played a holiday song in a cheerful tone that made me want to apologize to Ray Dern. A young man behind the counter looked up. His hair was slicked back, his tie loose, and his eyes had that bored glaze of a clerk who has seen everything except his own future. "Can I help you?" he asked. Mercer cleared his throat. "I'm Hal Mercer. I need information." The clerk's eyes flicked to Saul, and the glaze cracked. His expression changed so fast it was almost comic. Recognition, surprise, then a sudden awareness that his mouth might get him in trouble. "Hey," he said, and it came out as a squeak. "You're—" Saul looked at him, that's all. Just looked. The clerk swallowed hard and tried to turn his recognition into nothing. "You're the man from the trial," he blurted anyway, then winced, as if the words had punched him. I leaned on the counter. "Which trial? We go to so many." The clerk's eyes darted to Mercer, then to Saul, then away. "I forget it. I didn't say anything." Saul's voice was polite in the way a locked door is polite. "You remember." The clerk swallowed. "Couple years ago, assault case. The guy," he said, "you set him up. You testified. Everybody in the room was staring at you like you were a judge." Saul didn't blink. And you didn't even look at him," the clerk said, as if that was the strange part. "You just answered, like it was paperwork." Saul's eyes stayed steady. "Do you have a locker under the name Hal Mercer?" The clerk hesitated, then turned to the file drawers as if they might protect him. He pulled out a ledger, ran his finger down a page, and stopped. "There is," he said reluctantly, "Unit B -17. Mercer's face went blank. "That's impossible." The clerk looked at him. "Name is Mercer. Paid in advance cash." Mercer's voice rose. "I never." Saul interrupted, mild. "When was it rented?" The clerk checked. 3 months ago." Mercer's eyes widened. "I was in Florida 3 months ago. I have receipts," I said. "Receipts don't rent lockers. Names do. Somebody used yours." The clerk cleared his throat. "You need ID to access the unit." Saul's eyes stayed on him. "What kind of ID did the renter show?" The clerk hesitated, then said quietly, "A driver's license." Mercer barked a laugh that wasn't funny. "My license? I still have mine." "Not yours," the clerk muttered. "A license with your name on it." I whistled softly. "That's flattering. You've been promoted to a second identity." Mercer's hands shook. "This is crazy. I'm being framed for renting a locker." Saul said. "Not framed. Used." The clerk was watching Saul like Saul might explode. I decided to ease his nerves with conversation, which is a habit of mine even when it's not wise. "Listen," I said. You recognized my friend here. That means you've seen his face somewhere besides a courtroom. Who else comes through this place? The clerk's eyes flicked again, and his mouth tightened. Lots of people. Sure, I said, but some people wear nicer shoes. Saul leaned in slightly. Ray Dern. The clerk went pale. I don't. Saul's voice stayed soft. Do not lie. The clerk swallowed. His eyes darted toward the office door behind him, as if someone might be listening. A guy came in, he admitted. Said he was Mercer. He had Mercer's name on his ID. He sang under his breath like he couldn't help it. Off key. He looked sick. That was him, wasn't it? Yes, I said. And now he's dead. The clerk flinched. Jesus, Saul said. Give us access. The clerk's hands shook as he pulled a ring of keys from beneath the counter. I can come with you, he offered weakly, which meant he didn't want to be alone with his conscience. Saul said. Mercer looked like he might faint. My name is on it, he whispered. Why? Because you showed up at Wolfe's door, I said. Or because you were meant to. We went down a corridor lined with metal doors, the air colder and drier, the sound of our footsteps swallowed by concrete. The clerk led us to a door with a painted B, -17, and stopped. He unlocked it with trembling fingers and swung it open. The unit was small, 8 feet by 10, packed with dusty furniture under plastic sheets, some boxes, and a battered metal cash box sitting right on top, like a gift that didn't bother with wrapping. Mercer stared. That isn't mine. That, I said, is the first true thing you've said since you arrived. Saul stepped in, scanned corners, then moved straight to the cash box. It wasn't locked. That bothered me more than if it had been. Locks mean somebody expects you to be slowed. An open box means somebody expects you to look. Saul flipped the lid. Inside, nothing you could spend. No cash, no jewelry, just a single photograph. Face up, it was Saul Panzer. Not Saul as he is now. Tidy, controlled, middle-aged. Saul younger, Saul with hair a shade darker, jaw a shade sharper. Eyes the same flat certainty. The photo looked like it had been clipped from a file. On the back, in pencil, was a date and 2 words, witness always. The clerk made a small sound, almost a whimper. That Saul didn't react, but I saw a muscle move. Once in his cheek, Mercer's voice was thin. Why is that here? Saul's answer was simple. To show me they can reach back. And to show Wolfe, I added, that they know who he hires. I lifted the photo, checked under it. The bottom of the cash box had a false panel, thin metal, poorly fitted. Someone wanted it discovered, but wanted it to feel like discovery. I popped the panel loose with my thumbnail. Underneath was a holiday ornament. Glass, bright red, wrapped in tissue. It looked absurdly innocent in the dim locker, like a joke told at a funeral. I held it up. Merry Christmas. The ornament was heavier than glass should be. I shook it gently and heard a faint rattle that didn't belong to glitter. Saul took it from me, turned it over, and found a seam in the cap. He twisted carefully. The cap came off, and he slid out a tight roll of something wrapped in wax paper. Microfilm. The clerk stared. What the hell is that? Trouble, I said. Trouble that prefers small packaging. Mercer stepped back as if the microfilm might spray blood. This has nothing to do with me. Maybe not, I said. But your name's on the door, your fear's in your eyes, and your tenant's blood is on your floor. Mercer snapped, suddenly angry. I told you, he vanished. I didn't kill anyone. Saul's eyes stayed on the microfilm. No, he said quietly. But you know who did. Mercer's face froze. It was the second time his performance slipped. The first time had been when Wolfe showed him his name in the music. This time the slip was worse. It wasn't fear now, it was recognition, I said softly. Which play are you in, Hall? Mercer's mouth worked. I don't. Stop, Saul said, and there was no softness left in it. Who brought you to Wolfe? Mercer's shoulders sagged. He looked suddenly older, like the cold had finally gotten inside his bones. "A man," he whispered. "He came to the building this morning. Said he was a friend of Borton's. Said Borton was mixed up with something dangerous, and that if I called the police I'd be sorry. He told me to go to Nero Wolfe because Wolfe understands arrangements." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. "Did he give you a name?" Mercer shook his head. "Number, but he had. A pin on his lapel. A bird." Saul's eyes lifted to mine. "Kestrel." The clerk swallowed hard. "I don't want to be involved in this." "You already are," I said. "You said man from the trial. That means someone else knows you said it." He looked sick. Saul slid the microfilm into his pocket, with the care of a man handling a live fuse. "We leave," he said. "Not without the cash box," I said, and grabbed it. It was heavier than it looked, which meant there was probably more hidden in it, or the weight was part of the message. This isn't about money. It's about evidence. We marched back to the lobby. The clerk locked up behind us with shaking hands. Mercer walked like a man being led to court. In the car, I kept the cash box on my lap. The photo of Saul lay face down on top, as if it embarrassed the present. Mercer stared straight ahead, lips pressed together. Saul spoke once. Low. "That pin, the man wore it openly." Mercer nodded. Like he wanted me to notice. "He did," Saul said. We reached the brownstone as the late afternoon light turned the windows into dull mirrors. Fritz met us and let us in without a question. But his eyes went to the cash box the way a good chef looks at a suspicious oyster. Wolfe was in his office waiting, because Wolfe is always waiting for the world to come to him. I set the cash box on his desk, laid the photo beside it, and watched Wolfe's face as he took it in. He examined Saul's photograph with a long look that was not curiosity, but calculation. Then he lifted the ornament microfilm package from Saul's hand and held it between thumb and forefinger. "Inside is microfilm," I told him. "And the locker was rented in Hal Mercer's name. He swears he didn't rent it, and I believe him, mostly because he's too frightened to be clever." Wolfe's eyes shifted to Mercer, who stood in the doorway as if afraid to come closer to the desk. "Mr. Mercer," Wolfe said, "you have been used as a label that does not absolve you. It implicates you by proximity." Mercer's voice trembled. "I didn't know, I swear." Wolfe's tone sharpened. "Your swearing is irrelevant. Your utility is relevant. You will tell me everything you know about your tenant, Clive Borton." Mercer opened his mouth. Before he could speak, the doorbell rang. Fritz's voice came from the hall, calm and distant. "Mr. Wolfe, there are 2 police officers at the door. They say they have questions about a murder on Dock Street." Wolfe's eyes did not move from Mercer's face, but the air in the room tightened. "Excellent," Wolfe murmured. "The chorus arrives on cue." And in my pocket, the microfilm felt suddenly heavier, as if it had decided it was time to explode. Chapter 5. The 2 police officers at the door had the look of men who had been given an assignment in the wrong part of town, stiff, cautious, and slightly resentful of the clean brass on Wolfe's doorplate. Fritz admitted them with the serenity of a man admitting rain. They took 2 steps into the hall, saw Saul Panzer's face, and immediately wished they had brought somebody older. "Mr. Wolfe?" the taller one asked. "I am Nero Wolfe," Wolfe called from the office without rising. He had a talent for making a house feel like a courtroom, and he used it sparingly but effectively. "Enter." They entered. The taller one removed his cap, which was polite, and looked around as if expecting orchids to drop on his head. "We're here about Dock Street," he said. "Yes," Wolfe replied. "You are late." The shorter one bristled. "Late?" "Your inspector was here earlier," Wolfe said, "and he has presumably informed you that Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Panzer were present when the corpse of Ray Dern was discovered. If you wish to interrogate us, your opportunity was then." The tall officer cleared his throat. "Inspector Kramer said you might have taken something from the scene." I nearly applauded. Kramer, in a charitable mood, had decided to share his irritation with the department. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Inspector Kramer may say whatever helps him sleep. He is not here." The officer's gaze flicked to me. "Mr. Goodwin, That's me, I said. I do my best to look harmless. Did you remove any evidence? I removed my feet, I said. They were in the way. The officer's jaw tightened. He glanced at Saul, who was standing near the wall as if he had been built into it. Saul didn't blink. We can get a warrant, the shorter officer said, trying for firmness and landing on adolescence. Wolfe's voice turned cool. You can do many things. Meanwhile, you will not invade my home and paw at my possessions on the basis of hearsay. If Inspector Kramer believes he has cause, he may come in person and request cooperation with proper decorum. The tall officer shifted his weight. What about your guest, Evan Rook? Wolfe's eyes moved, briefly, to mine. It was an instruction, I said. Mr. Rook is upstairs, being kept from singing. If you insist on dragging him out, do it with Inspector Kramer present. Wolfe prefers his disturbances properly supervised. The taller officer hesitated. He had the sense to recognize a wall when he hit one, even if it was upholstered. All right, he said. But if you have anything at all, that helps. Wolfe's expression suggested he had just been offered a bargain on rancid fish. If I decide to assist, I will contact Inspector Kramer. You may go. They went, both of them, and the shorter one shot a last sour look at Saul on the way out, as if Saul's calm was a personal insult. Fritz closed the door behind them and returned as if he had merely finished setting a tray. Wolfe turned his attention back to the office, which meant to the cash box, the photograph, the microfilm, and Hal Mercer, who looked as if his bones had decided to loosen out of protest. Wolfe said, Mr. Mercer, you will now tell me everything you know about Clive Borton. Mercer swallowed. He rented a room, paid on time, kept to himself. Wolfe's eyes stayed steady. That is what landlords say when they know something and prefer not to share it. Mercer's hands twisted. He worked for a charity. That was better. What charity? Wolfe asked. Mercer cleared his throat. The Christmas Relief and Hearth Fund. Wolfe's eyelids lowered slightly. I am familiar with it. I was too. It was one of those respected seasonal operations that collected money with smiling faces and spent it where nobody could see, either on needy families or on new automobiles, depending on the kind of men doing the counting. Mercer added. He said he was a driver, picking up donations, dropping off boxes. Wolfe said. Name of the organizer. Mercer looked down. Clay Reddick. Wolfe's eyes lifted to Saul for a fraction of a second, then back. Saul's face did not change, but the air changed anyway, like a draft finding a crack. I said, Clay Reddick. Clean suit, clean smile, clean reputations. Saul's voice came quiet. Not clean. Wolfe's gaze held Saul's explain. Saul didn't like explaining. He preferred results. But Wolfe had asked, and Saul had the habit of obeying Wolfe even when it scraped his pride. Years ago, Saul said, a relief collection disappeared. A big one. It was supposed to be delivered to distribution points. It never arrived. That was 10 years ago. Saul nodded. A bagman was caught moving part of the cash through a pawnbroker. He was arrested. There was a trial, I testified. The clerk's words in the storage facility came back, the man from the trial. Wolfe's voice was dry. And the bagman did not forgive you? No, Saul said. He went to prison. He got out. Some people remembered. Wolfe tapped the microfilm package on his blotter. Once, thoughtfully. Clay Reddick was involved. Saul's jaw tightened. Reddick wasn't charged. He was too respectable. He ran the front, the fund, the speeches, the smiling. The dirty work was done by men who didn't mind prison. Wolfe's eyes flicked to Mercer. Mr. Mercer, did Mr. Borton ever mention a missing collection? Mercer shook his head quickly. Number he just. He kept odd hours. Sometimes men came by. Nice coats, quiet voices. Wolfe leaned back slightly. Mr. Goodwin, I have been inserted into an arrangement. You don't say, I muttered. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. I dislike being written into other people's stories. It is invariably vulgar. He made a decision with the same tone he used when deciding between roast duck and roast goose. Goodwin, he said. You will investigate the Christmas Relief and Hearth Fund. You will learn what Mr. Borton did, what he saw, and why he has become a convenient absence. You will pay particular attention to Clay Reddick. I love sewers, I said, especially when they might have diamonds. You will take Mr. Panzer, Wolfe added, not because you require protection, of course not, but because the makers of this melodrama are paying attention to him. Their attention is instructive, Saul said. Yes, sir. Wolfe turned his eyes to Mercer. You will remain here. Fritz will see to your comfort and restraint. If you attempt to leave, you will find it difficult. Mercer's voice cracked. I can't stay here, those men. Wolfe cut him off. You came to my house. You will endure it. Mercer looked as if he might argue, then met Fritz's calm gaze in the doorway and decided not to. Wolfe's attention returned to the microfilm. Before you go, Goodwin, take this to Mr. Lon Cohen. He can have it developed and printed quickly. I blinked. Lon, yes, Wolfe said, as if I was slow. It is possible the film contains a list of names. Mr. Cohen enjoys names. It will please him to be useful. That was Wolfe. He could turn a favor into a weapon and make it feel like hospitality. I took the microfilm package and the battered cash box. Saul and I left Mercer in Fritz's hands and went out into the December chill. On the way downtown, Saul spoke again, as if he had decided words were cheaper than silence. The bagman's name was Warren Pell, he said. He moved collection money for the fund. I testified he delivered it to a storage basement instead of the relief depot. And he went away, I said. Saul nodded. Reddick came out clean. He held a press conference about betrayal and raised more money the next week. That's the best trick, I said. Steal once, then raise twice. Saul didn't smile. Pell blamed me, not the police, not the judge. Me, because you were the one he saw, I said. Like Dern saw you, like that photo in the cash box. Saul's eyes stayed forward. They want to make it personal. Everything is personal when someone wants you dead, I said. We stopped at Lon Cohen's office first, because Wolfe had asked, and because Lon's habit of being in the right place at the right time was nearly as unnatural as Wolfe's habit of never leaving his chair. Lon looked up from behind his desk, saw me, and grinned the way a man grins when trouble has just walked in wearing a familiar face. Archie, he said, you look like you've been kissed by a snowplow. Seasonal, I said. I brought you a present. I handed him the microfilm package. Lon's eyebrows lifted. He turned it over, whistled softly, and looked at Saul. Panzer, he said, still scaring innocent citizens, only when necessary. Saul said. Lon studied the microfilm again. You want this developed? Yesterday, I said. And if it turns out to be pictures of kittens, I'll be disappointed. Lon chuckled. Give me an hour. We left him to his contacts and his printing machines and drove to West 42nd Street again, this time to a building with a respectable lobby and a name that tried to sound permanent. The Christmas Relief and Hearth Fund had rented office space on the 3rd floor, which was appropriate. High enough to feel important, low enough to run away quickly. The lobby was decorated for the season. That should have been harmless. It wasn't. A group of carolers stood near the wall in matching coats, dark wool, red scarves, clean gloves. They held folders of music. They were rehearsing quietly under their breath, as if preparing to charm donors. Their sound was soft, polite, and wrong in the same way Ray Dern's had been wrong. When we walked in, the singing faltered, not stopped entirely. Too obvious, but faltered like a heartbeat, skipping. Their eyes were on Saul, not all of them. Just enough to matter, the kind of looking you do when you're counting exits and measuring distance, not when you're admiring a tenor. I muttered. Different uniforms, same eyes. Saul's voice was low. They're watching me. Try to enjoy it, I said. It's not every day you get reviewed. We crossed the lobby. One of the carolers, tall, smooth-faced, shifted his folder and let me see his hand. The thumb had a scar across the joint, old and clean. Not a singer's scar. A fighter's Saul caught it too. His shoulders did not change, but his eyes did. The elevator took us up to the 3rd floor. The doors opened on a carpeted hall and a glass door with gold lettering, Christmas Relief and Hearth Fund. Beneath it, smaller, Clay Reddick, Director. Inside, the office had the smell of pine cleaner and polished conscience. Posters on the walls showed smiling families and bold promises. A volunteer at a desk looked up and smiled, as if we were here to donate. "Can I help you?" "I hope so," I said. "We're here to see Mr. Reddick." The volunteer hesitated, eyes flicking past me to Saul. A tiny pause, just enough to show she hadn't expected Saul Panzer to walk in unannounced. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but we have urgency. That's better than an appointment." She picked up the phone, spoke in a whisper, then nodded. "Mr. Reddick will see you." We were ushered into an office that looked like a magazine advertisement. Neat desk, framed certificates, a small Christmas tree in the corner decorated tastefully, not joyfully. Clay Reddick rose from behind the desk with a smile so clean it could have been laundered. He was in his 40s, lean, dark, haired, and dressed in a suit that fit like it had been tailored by a man who also tailored alibis. His handshake was warm, his eyes bright, his voice smooth. "Mr. Goodwin," he said as if he had been expecting me. His gaze moved to Saul, and the smile tightened just a fraction. "And Mr. Panzer." Saul didn't offer his hand. "Mr. Reddick." Reddick's smile recovered. "Please sit. Cocoa?" He gestured toward a tray on a side table. Mugs, a pot, little marshmallows, as if innocence could be served hot. "I'll pass," I said. "I like my sweetness with less suspicion." Reddick laughed lightly, the right laugh in the right place. "Fair enough. What can I do for you?" "We're looking for a man named Clive Borton," I said. "He worked for you." Reddick's eyebrows lifted with concern. "Clive, is something wrong?" "Possibly," I said. "His landlord found a blood stain in his room, and he's missing." Reddick's expression shifted into practiced alarm. "Well done, but not perfect." "That's terrible. Clive is a good man, reliable, quiet." "Quiet men are hard to find when they vanish," I said. "What did he do for the fund?" "He handled collections," Reddick said, "picked up donations from corporate sponsors and private contributors, delivered them to our accounting office. Sometimes he drove relief parcels to distribution points. And sometimes," I said, "he drove them somewhere else." The smile held, but the eyes sharpened. "I don't understand." "You will," Saul said, and his voice cut through the cocoa and the certificates like a blade through wrapping paper. Reddick looked at Saul, still smiling, but the skin around his eyes tightened. "Mr. Panzer, I remember you." "Good," Saul said. Reddick's hands spread slightly, palms up, generous. "A long time ago, there was an unfortunate incident involving a theft from our collections. I was as outraged as anyone." "Outraged," I said, "and untouched." Reddick's laugh came again, smaller. "Mr. Goodwin, are you accusing me of something?" "I'm accusing you of knowing why a caroller named Ray Dern is dead," I said. "And why a safe deposit key and a storage locker have your funds stink on them." His smile froze for an instant, then softened into concern again. "Ray Dern? I don't know that name." Saul's eyes stayed flat. "You know the symbol." Reddick's eyebrows rose. "Symbol?" Saul didn't answer. He just watched. Reddick leaned back in his chair. "Gentlemen, I devote my life to helping families in need. This fund is audited. We are respected. If Clive is missing, I will of course cooperate with police." "You'll cooperate," I said, "because you can't afford not to." Reddick's eyes stayed on mine. "Have you spoken to Inspector Kramer?" "Not today," I said. "Today we're speaking to you." There was a pause. In that pause Reddick's right hand moved, small, casual, toward the side of his desk. I saw it too. Reddick opened a drawer partway, as if reaching for a file. The angle of the opening showed the corner of something metallic inside. A small brass object, stamped with a diving bird. Reddick's hand stopped. He realized we had seen it. The smile stayed, but it turned thin. "I think," he said softly. You should leave, I think, I replied. That was the first honest thing you've said. Saul's voice was quiet. That symbol does not belong in a charity office. Reddick's eyes held Saul's now, and for the first time the clean smile slipped enough to show what was underneath, irritation and something like satisfaction. You testified, Reddick said, very softly. Some men don't forget. Saul didn't blink, neither do I. Reddick's smile returned, polished again, but now openly cold. Mr. Goodwin, I offered cocoa. That was kindness you declined. That was unwise. I stood. We've made a habit of unwise choices lately. As we walked to the door, I felt the weight of the room shift, not physical. Intentional. This place was arranged like the loft on Dock Street had been arranged. Clean furniture, clean posters, clean smiles, stage dressing for something ugly. In the outer office, the volunteer watched us with wide eyes beyond the glass door. In the lobby, the carolers had stopped rehearsing. They stood with their folders closed now, waiting. Their faces were blank. Their eyes were awake. Saul's gaze slid across them like a searchlight. One of them, tall, smooth, faced, gave a tiny nod, almost respectful. A bell about to toll, I thought. That's what they were watching for. We stepped out of the building into the cold, and the wind hit my face hard enough to make me grateful for sensation. In the car, I said. He wanted us there. Saul nodded. Yes. And the drawer, I said. He let us see it. Saul's voice stayed level. Invitation. I started the engine, hands steady by habit, then we just accepted. Saul's eyes went to the rearview mirror. We're being followed. By whom? He didn't answer right away because he was counting. 2 cars, he said finally. One from the corner, one pulling out behind us now. I felt my stomach tighten. Holiday traffic. Saul's tone didn't change. Holiday hunting. We pulled into the flow, and I aimed for Midtown like any citizen with errands. Behind us, the first car eased in. The second kept distance. Polite as murder. I said. We need Lon. We need Wolfe, Saul corrected. That too, I said. But Wolfe doesn't fit in the glove compartment. Saul's eyes stayed on the mirror. They want us to go somewhere. Let's disappoint them, I said, and took the next turn fast. The following car turned with us. Saul's hand moved inside his coat. Archie. Not yet, I said. If we start a gun concert on 43rd, Wolfe will make me eat canned soup for a month. Saul's eyes hardened, then drive. I drove. And as we cut across traffic to lose our shadows, my pocket buzzed. My office phone line forwarded to the car receiver we sometimes used, a little gadget Wolfe hated because it encouraged spontaneity. I snatched it up. Goodwin. Lon Cohen's voice came quick. Archie, I've got your film. It's not kittens. What is it? A list, Lon said. Names and amounts, donations, corporate, private, big money, and he hesitated. A column marked, diverted, and a date line at the bottom tonight, 9 o'clock, West 42nd, 17th floor. I felt the steering wheel go suddenly slick under my palm. Wolfe's map, Reddick's invitation, Dern's blood, the caroler's eyes. Lon, I said. Who's at the top of the list? There was a pause, and when Lon spoke again, his voice had lost its cheer. Clay Reddick, he said, and right under him, Hal Mercer. Behind me, Saul said softly. Archie, they're closing in. And ahead, at the next light, a grey sedan rolled into position as if the street had been reserved for it. Chapter 6. The grey sedan rolled into position at the next light, like it had been assigned the lane by a traffic cop who worked nights for somebody else. I kept my hands loose on the wheel, and my face arranged into the mild, innocent expression that never fools anyone but occasionally buys you 3 seconds. Saul didn't look at the sedan. He watched the mirror the way a man watches a fuse. 2 cars, he repeated. They're tightening. Maybe they just like my driving, I said. Saul's voice stayed level. Archie, if we head straight to the brownstone, they'll know where we live. That ship sailed when they put my friend's baby picture in a cash box, I said. But I take your point. The light changed, the grey sedan eased forward. Another car behind it, dark, anonymous, moved too, keeping the same polite distance you maintain when you're trying not to spook the prey before you get it where you want it. I turned right at the corner, not sharp enough to scream panic, just brisk enough to say I had a purpose. The grey sedan turned right. The dark car did too. That's sweet, I said. They're committed, Saul said. Go where there are people, Midtown, I said. That's like going where there are ants. I threaded into thicker traffic and aimed for Times Square, the one place in Manhattan where even a kidnapping looks like a costume rehearsal. Saul watched the cars behind us shift, adjust, trade positions. They were doing it neatly. That meant professional, or disciplined amateurs with a good coach. At 44th I made a sudden legal, but mean turn into a hotel driveway, rolled past the awning as if I belonged, and slid around the side toward a service lane. The grey sedan hesitated. Hesitation is costly in traffic, and by the time it followed, I was already out the other end, merging into a different stream. The dark car tried to follow and got stuck behind a delivery truck. Saul's eyes stayed on the mirror. Grey still there, other lost. Half a victory, I said. I'll take it. Now where? Saul's voice was quiet. Lon. I nodded. Lon Cohen's office was a sensible choice, because it had two things the brownstone did not: people who weren't afraid to yell, and the kind of messy public presence that makes quiet violence inconvenient. I swung us south and west, then cut east. The grey sedan followed, but it was further back now, forced to behave like a citizen. We reached Lon's building and I pulled into a loading zone with the confidence of a man who knows he will not be ticketed quickly enough to matter. Saul got out first, scanned the street, then held the door for me with no expression at all, which was his idea of humor. Inside, Lon took one look at our faces and stopped joking. You boys look like you just left a bad party, he said. shadows, and said it again, softly, without humor, like advice you ignore at your own risk. Next year, listen to the songs.